Welcome to Just Write Julie, the writing podcast where craft meets strategy and creativity meets clarity. I'm Julie Navickas, romance author, corporate communications pro, and university instructor. Most writing podcasts stay in one lane. This one brings together three: craft, career, and communication. Each episode features authors, editors, and marketers to help you strengthen the work, position it, and talk about it with confidence. If you're ready to write better and share your work with intention, you're in the right place. Just Write Julie. Let's get to work. Welcome to Just Write Julie, the podcast for writing meets strategy and creativity meets clarity. I'm your host, Julie Navickas, a multi-published agented romance author, a communications professional, and a university instructor. And I am so excited to be here for episode 5 with Claire Coffey, founder of the Coffey Edit. Claire specializes in romance, romantasy, and memoir, helping authors not only write stronger books, but position and market them strategically. Claire, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Julie. Thank you for having me.
Yay.
I'm so excited
Me
to talk
too.
books today.
Me too. We've got so much to cover, and you bring such an incredible lens and such wonderful experience. I can't wait to dive in. So if you're ready, I'm ready.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. All right. Well, Claire, what I love about you is that you didn't start in the editing world. You come from more of the public relations and that communication side of the industry. So what made you take the leap from PR into the editorial world?
So you're right. I spent years in PR and communications, and there's a lot that I loved there. I loved the storytelling, the strategy, the just figuring out how to make something land with the right audience. But after a layoff, I had to figure out my next step, and I came back to books. I've always loved books. And so I made the leap, took on my first client. And when I got my first manuscript, I was like, this is real. Like, we're doing it. So it felt great. And so I've just been making my way forward ever since.
Oh, I'm so proud of you. That is such a really difficult thing to make such a large shift. But for you to recognize your passion and know that books was where it was going to be at, and you built a brand, you built, an entire business, and it sounds like it's been so successful and so like just truly rewarding for you.
Oh, thank you. It's so funny how we return to the things we did as kids.
Absolutely. There's so much that could be a whole conversation in itself. You're right. But I think at our heart, right, we know who we are and who we want to be. And we take a little side quest for a while and then we come right back to where we started.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Well,
now
Claire,
we're playing in books.
absolutely. Absolutely. That's the coolest part about all of this. But what I really like about your experience in particular, right, is you come with this dual lens, right? It's craft and it's strategy. So how
Mhm.
would you say that your PR background and your experiences shaped the way that you approach editing today when you're working with authors?
Yeah. So PR trained me to think about the audience first.
Mm-hmm.
Can't write a good pitch without knowing who it's for. You're looking to see how you want to drive how the audience feels.
Yeah.
And it's the same question that as a developmental editor, I'm asking, who is this book for?
Yeah.
What's the emotional promise that the author is trying to write?
Yeah.
So most editors will come to the manuscript thinking about craft, and I come in thinking about craft and communications at the same time. And I think that changes what I notice when I'm editing.
Absolutely. And you're right. When I think back to like my first experiences too, when I started writing a book for the first time, I was only thinking about the story. I was not in
Right.
any way, in any space in my mind, thinking about how am I going to sell this? How am I going to market it? What would be great for social media?
Right.
But the lens that you offer, right? You help you help authors think through that at the same time, which I think is
Yes.
so smart and so strategic.
Yes.
hmm So, you don't treat marketing as something that happens after the book is done, which is a very valuable, very important piece of advice that I think that you offer authors. How can authors start to think about positioning that from that very first draft?
Yeah. So I say this a lot to authors that I work with. Your marketing strategy should start at the beginning of writing your book.
Mm.
Um, Genre conventions aren't arbitrary rules, they are promises you're making to the reader, and readers have their expectations. So when you understand what your genre promises, there's the emotional experience, the beats, the payoff. You're doing the marketing for your book. You just don't realize it. Um, when you know who your book is for from the beginning, everything else comes later. The pitch, the cover copy, the social media posts, it all gets easier because your book is already built with the genre and the reader in mind.
Absolutely. And that's just such a valuable perspective that you just don't know until you know, right? And I think that's the value, right, of working with industry professionals who can help guide you in that direction. So, with that said, what do you think is the biggest mistake you've seen authors make when it comes to thinking about marketing their book?
Waiting to think about marketing, hands down. Authors finishing their manuscript and then treating marketing like something they have to go do for a period of time.
Yeah.
Um, the other one is marketing the plot instead of the feeling.
Oof, yeah.
Um, Readers don't fall in love with the plot summary, they fall in love with the promise.
Yeah.
Enemies to lovers in a fantasy world, for example, that is plot. But the feeling of hating someone so much and then it trips over into something else entirely, that is a feeling, and that is what keeps us up all night reading. That is what makes us, I have to go get this next book.
Absolutely.
So that's what sells books. That feeling is what you're selling.
Yeah. Oh, such a valid statement for sure. And I think that's something that you learn over time after you've been in the space long enough. But, there's kind of that. I've been asked this question several times. I'm sure you have too, like plot or characters, right? What sells the story? What does it?
Mhm.
And I always think, like my first initial answer was like, oh, plot, like it tells you like what's engaging, what's happening, what are those external forces, and what's the antagonist doing and things. But, those are things that just happen. I think what readers
Right.
relate to more is the feeling the characters experience as they go through those obstacles. And so thinking about that from a marketing lens is just so wise and so smart because that's what readers really want to know about. That's what they want to feel as they're reading.
Right. They want
Mhm.
to identify with those characters,
Yeah.
and that you do that through the emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think once you know that little secret, it becomes a whole lot easier.
Right. Right.
Well, as we're kind of talking through, characters and emotions and things in that space, those are things that you want to iron out pretty early, right? In your earlier drafts, you want to think through and be strategic about it. So let's pause for a moment and I want to talk a little bit about craft.
Sure.
So Claire, you offer developmental editing services. So let's pause for a second and let's talk about what does a developmental editor actually do and how does it differ from the other types of editing?
So let me give you an analogy. I always say that a copy editor fixes the paint job, where a developmental editor is looking at the foundation.
Mm,
I'm not in the sentences, I'm looking at the story as a whole, looking at, like, does the structure hold? Is the
yeah.
pacing working? Is the character arc actually arcing? Um,
Important.
is the main character a different person by the end of the book? And have they gone through a transformation for better? Um, so does the book deliver on the promise from the first chapter?
Yeah.
So I'm the first reader who's also a strategist, and I'm looking to make sure that all of that is a yes before worrying about sentences sounding
Yeah,
well written.
absolutely. And it's one of the best services that I feel like I've taken advantage of personally. I know when I was an early author, you think you know what you're doing. I will boldly say
Right.
that. You think you got it covered and you know what you how to tell a story. And I remember working with my first developmental editor, and gosh, she was so patient with me and just so kind. But she would point out things that you like step back in hindsight and you're like, oh my gosh, that is a massive flaw. That is a massive plot hole. That is something silly I
Right.
said that makes no sense, right? So when you look at it from that strategic lens, right, a developmental editor, they are patching the foundation where there are significant cracks that sometimes you just can't see because you're just too close to the story. So it's just such an
Exactly.
invaluable service. Um, and I know sometimes authors are like, oh, it's so expensive. I'd rather save it for proofreading or line editing. No, no. My advice, no
Yeah.
one asked for it. Spend the money, right? Invest in yourself, invest in your story,
Right.
and work with the developmental editor who knows what they're doing.
Yes. And also there's no rush.
No,
There is no rush.
yeah,
It's worth it to take the time in making your book the best possible book.
absolutely. You owe it to yourself, right? If you're going to spend the time, craft the story, invest in yourself, invest in the time, and don't rush through
Right.
it. Yeah, you'll be sad if you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, Claire. So speaking of kind of investing in yourself, right? So yes, you offer developmental editing and other types of editing services, but you're also a book coach. So I'm wondering
Yeah.
if you would be able to walk us through, what does that process look like? What can you expect if you're taking advantage of that service?
Yeah. So coaching is really about being an author's thought partner while they are writing their book
Yeah.
at any stage. It's usually at the beginning. First time authors can really benefit from book coaching because sometimes it's really just not feedback that they need. It's just someone who believes in the book when they are second guessing themselves.
Yeah.
It's when some of it is structure and accountability, sure, but a lot of it is just permission.
Yeah.
And it's having a thought partner, permission to write badly and write your shitty first draft.
Exactly.
So, yeah,
There's so much value in that too, of just having a partner, like you point out, who knows your book just as well as you do. Because like we've already mentioned, you just get so into it and you can't see the gaps or you don't know what to think about. And
right.
so having a professional who's experienced in the industry, who has written a story, many stories in some cases, themselves, that you can just offer some guidance and some feedback that you wouldn't find anywhere else.
Right. And you get so deep into your words that before you know it, you're like, is that even spelled right? Like what are words? Nothing makes sense anymore.
Nothing makes sense. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, well, what I think about too when it comes to book coaching is, it's probably the first moment for some authors where you're handing over a manuscript that you have painstakingly, poured your heart out onto a page and you're handing it over to somebody who's, I mean, sometimes more or less a stranger, right? Somebody who
Yes.
you've, looked at their website and thought, yeah, this looks good. This lady knows what she's doing, right? So you hand your manuscript over and there's a real sense of vulnerability there. What do you think it feels like for authors to do that? And what do you wish they would know about that process?
Oh, it's vulnerable for sure. I think what authors don't always know what's going on with going in with a good editor is editors are fundamentally on the author's side. And we're not there to rewrite their book how we would have written it. We're there to make it the fullest version of itself.
Yeah.
Um, we're there just to amplify the author's voice. Um, some of my most meaningful work has been working with authors who are writing something hard
Yeah.
that's like trauma or grief or loss.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't take that kind of trust lightly.
Yeah.
Um, I notice the things that are not being said in those manuscripts. And sometimes that's where the important conversations happen. That's where I'm helping the author to go a little deeper and just make it that much better.
Absolutely. And it's such a valuable thing to find somebody that first believes in your story as much as you do, but someone who's willing to commit the time and be honest and transparent to really make the story the best that it can be and handle sometimes some very sensitive, very emotional concepts. It's difficult to share your story, whether it's fiction or nonfiction.
Right.
It's tough, right? To put your heart out there for the world. And it's nice to know that you have a partner in place who will help you just kind of guide you through that process. And like you said, make it the book the best that it could potentially be.
Right. And treating it that carefully when
Yeah,
it is a difficult topic.
most certainly.
That's absolutely something that stays top of mind, especially for those kind of books.
Absolutely. Definitely. Well, I think we're kind of headed in this direction. One of the things that I find the most difficult is knowing how to talk about your work or describe it to someone who's
Yes.
interested, right? Because inevitably somebody's going to walk up to you and say, "Oh, you wrote a book? Tell me about it." And then as the author,
Yes.
you go, and you freeze because you're like, how do I talk about this? So, what's your advice? How do you help authors find the right words to talk about their book in a way that's meaningful for readers?
Yeah. So I talk to my authors. Well, first of all, I tell them to start practicing
Good
because it is hard to talk
advice.
about your book. I ask them to describe their book to me like they would to a friend. You're not pitching it, you're not querying, you're just talking about it.
Mhm.
And most of the time, the words that come out are a natural conversation and they're better than anything they'd written down. And I'm listening for the emotional core that is underneath the plot summary. And that's the hook, and that's what the readers are buying.
Yeah.
Um, Once the author has that feeling named, they can talk about their book on social media, in a query letter, and at a dinner party when someone asks what they're working on.
That's so smart. And just understanding the value of that emotional hook, that emotional core, that's the heart
Mm-hmm.
of the story. And as soon as I think you
Yeah,
can identify and understand how do I effectively talk about that, it makes it a whole lot easier to answer, oh, you wrote a book. What's it about? Right? It's
right,
not the plot.
right.
It's not the plot.
It's a much better answer when you're
Yeah,
not saying, well, this happens and then this happens and then this. It,
exactly.
right.
Exactly. And I absolutely remember giving a play by play, right? Of here's what
Yeah,
happens in the first part, and then this character does this, and then they say this. And it's like,
yeah,
that ain't it. It's not the way to talk about your
right.
book. So, again, it all comes back to the early thoughts of marketing and understanding who your audience is as you're
Mhm.
writing instead of waiting until afterwards. So, just great advice, Claire, as always.
Oh, thank you.
Well, Claire, we've talked about a lot in a very short amount of time, but let's just say there was a listener out there who only had 2 minutes to commit to our conversation today. What's the biggest takeaway that you would leave with them?
I would say that craft and marketing are not separate conversations.
Mm,
The best books are built with both in mind from the beginning, and a well built book already knows who it's for.
yes,
The clarity lives in the story itself. You know what the genre is, you know who that audience is. And my job as an editor or marketing strategist is to help authors figure that out.
absolutely. It was just invaluable advice. And I hope everyone listening listens to what you just said because that's the magic right there.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, Claire, you clearly have a vast background. You have experience, personal experience, and you have that marketing and that PR and that communication lens that truly is invaluable when it comes to selling a book. Where can listeners find you? Do you have a website available or are you active on social media?
Yes. So the best place to start is thecoffeyeditor.com. That's where you can learn about my services. I have a link to share in your show notes. I have a free self editing roadmap where once your first draft is written and you need to assess your manuscript, this roadmap will help you to assess what you need to do next, what type of editing you might need, or where you need to go back and ask the book questions.
Yeah.
I'm on TikTok at Claire C Book Editing. I talk about writing, editing, and marketing. And if you want to go any deeper, my newsletter is where I talk about the kind of stuff that doesn't fit in a 60-second video. So come find me.
That's perfect. Well, Claire, thank you so much for joining me today on the Just Right Julie show, where writing meets strategy and creativity meets clarity. I hope our conversation today gave anyone listening just something new to try on the page, in your career, or how you talk about your work. You can follow along and subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And if this episode helped you, please leave a review or share it with a writer friend who could use these resources as well. For more tools and templates and behind the scenes looks at different lessons, you can visit authorjulienavickas.com or connect with me on social media, which is where you'll find this episode as well. Until next time, just write and don't be afraid to be strategic about it.